This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
This is Phyllis Strong, writer-producer on Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Warp 5 on Trek FM.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, boomers, to another episode of Warp 5 Trek FM's dedicated Enterprise podcasts. I am but one of your hosts, Brandi Jackola, and with me, as always, is Patrick Devlin. Patrick, how are you Kiwi?
Oh man, that came up quick. I'm doing good. We're recording on Memorial Day, and we have an interesting topic for that particular day. So, how are you today?
I am very well, thank you for asking, and I am looking forward to talking about this topic. That sounds so weird when we're going to say what it is. Anyway, also with me, of course, as always, our friend. We love him. Everybody loves him. Brandon-Shea Mutala. Brandon, how are you?
I am doing very good. I am nicely anticipating this next week off here, not having to edit any podcasts or anything like that. I'm looking forward to it. I busted my butt last week to get all my podcast editing done, so I'm like, can just go to the breeze and just relax and not have to worry about it this week. So I'm doing good.
Lucky. I have two.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I'm sure you are. However, I am becoming the most nicknamed person on the network.
Are you?
Yes.
We got Tapat, we got Kiwi, we got Stinky Pants.
When did that one come up?
Just now.
Okay, perfect.
So, before we begin our main topic, let us discuss a little bit of feedback we had on our most recent episode that came out, which was number 148, which was about zombies, and we had our guest Keith DeCandido. Brandon, what did people say about that one?
Well, we had Corey Elrod say, the disturbing clip of the Vulcans going insane shown to Archer in The Expanse helped set the mood for Impulse. That clip had to be in the back of his mind during the events of Impulse. It's a great episode. I first saw Night of the Living Dead around age 10, and I loved it. I don't like fast-moving and mad zombies. One of the reasons I fell in love with The Walking Dead was because of the zombies, because the zombies were how I always imagined them. Off topic, I got upset with Walking Dead when they spent half a season walking down the railroad tracks only to find an alternate universe crazy Tasha Yar. I enjoyed the discussion. I'm going to check out Keith's work. And then him and I got into a discussion on Walking Dead, and I told him I actually liked that part when they were just doing the train tracks for a while. Thought it was good. Then we had a comment from Brianna Fern. She said, I can't watch even a remotely scary movie, particularly zombie movies or alien movies. I tried to watch Cargo on Netflix 2 nights ago, and I still can't sleep. And that wasn't even that scary. With zombie stuff, it's about losing control and becoming mindless. Degeneration and de-evolution fears. This goes back to Victorian fears and the Gothic tales of 19th century England. Something that looks so human, but is so desperately other. For the Vulcans, that was particularly frightening to witness because control is everything, and to become mindless, seething monsters was more off-putting to me than any human zombie fright.
Very nice. Well, thank you everyone who contributed comments to that particular episode. And we did not have any new reviews this week, so I guess it is time to get down to it. This week, recording on Memorial Day, we are going to talk about the crew deaths that all happened on the Enterprise NX-01. Most of which happened during Season 3, big surprise.
Right. Now, the interesting thing about this, and the reason why I brought this up as a topic, is because if you guys look at our show art for today, we have an image. Now, it's associated with cracked.com, so I don't know the article that it came from or anything like this. I just know that I've seen this image go around frequently enough, and it has Picard, and it has Kirk, and it has Janeway, and Archer as well, and it basically says what percentage of their crews died while under their command. So the title of it says percentage of the crew killed while they were the captain, and for each of the people on it, it's got one person to mark 1%, and Archer is something like listed on this as like 60%. They're trying to claim that Archer had 60. What's that?
63.
I thought it was
63%.
68.
Something like that. Anyways,
Yeah.
so
It's in the 60s, which is ridiculous.
which is ridiculous. So we wanted to take a look at this. Now, Janeway is something like 35%, Kirk's like 20%, and they're trying to say that Captain Picard had less than 10%. But I mean, like, which is weird because percentage-wise, if you look at it, I mean, percentage-wise, 10% of Kirk's ship would be, 100 people. I don't know if they would count families and stuff in those deaths, because I mean, in Best of Both Worlds, or not Best of Both Worlds, in which was the one, Q-Who, right, where they took that section of the ship out, like, 47 crew or whatever, I'm sure the number was, died, but that could have been family members as well. So we thought this was nonsense, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way. First off, could you get a ship back home losing 65? Let's split the difference, 65% of your crew?
Yeah, that's 2/3 of your crew.
Right.
Yeah.
You just couldn't get home. You'd be stuck.
Right. So we wanted to talk about it. So, yeah.
And they do make comment of what the acceptable loss rate is in one of these episodes that we're going to talk about later.
Excellent. Interesting. Yes, there were more episodes to watch than we had anticipated, so we did split them up.
Yeah.
So,
We didn't watch. There was 2 we didn't watch, right?
Yeah.
There was 2 episodes we didn't watch, but we each watched 4 episodes. So there was 14 episodes where they talk about people dying.
This is correct. And let's go ahead and get into this. The first one happens very early in Season 3, in the episode Anomaly. I almost said that wrong. Anomaly.
Nama.
Anyway, this is when they first really encounter the anomalies in the Expanse, courtesy of the sphere builders, you jerks. And during the anomalies happening, it basically makes the ship drop out of warp, and they're pretty much sitting at 1/4 impulse power. During which time, Osarian pirates attack. And during that attack, they did manage to injure a lot of people, but actually one human did die from his injuries, and that was Tactical Officer Fuller.
Yes. I think it's interesting that they were actually making an effort to not kill somebody until it was really important. And then it kind of seems interesting that they chose this episode to write their first death into the show. I think we're going to talk about that right off the bat. Here we are, 54 episodes, unless 53 if you call Broken Bow one episode. But I mean, more than 2 seasons into the show, more than 50% out of what we got until we get our first death. And then it's killed by these Osarian pirates.
Yeah. And I feel like that they're going to do that because it sort of spurs Archer into this new kind of mindset of what he will do in order to accomplish his mission and how far he will push that envelope. So, yeah. And it also shows a frightening visage of what could happen to them should they remain stuck in the Expanse like the Osarians did. So, because they're not native to the Expanse, they got trapped in there like everybody else seems to, because of the barrier that will let you in but not back out.
They give this... There's a lot of unnamed people who end up dying. I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a good portion of them that are unnamed. But they made sure that the first death is someone that we learned the name of, because that does give you a little bit more connection to that person, even if you don't have a huge connection to them, you know?
Right. So, Brandi, you rewatched this episode here. I remember that it was this one, but what was the scene again? How does he get killed by the pirates?
Basically, the Osarian pirates are beaming aboard, and they're just attacking any crew member that they see. And their weapons, I believe, are plasma-powered, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. And his injuries were just too severe. The other two crew people who were severely injured were going to survive, but Fuller did not. Fuller's injuries were too severe, and there was nothing that Dr. Phlox could do.
Right.
And he was pretty upset about it, but it was nothing compared to the look on Archer's face. Yeah, that's the first time we really see that look this season. And he goes and has it out with the one Osarian that they capture and is in the brig, and wackiness ensues and a little bit of torture. So
yeah, so if you listen back to an older episode where I guessed it on, you'll hear at some point me praying that Archer will just start killing people.
That
during
was when
this
we talked
episode.
about Regine.
yeah.
Oh, is that the next episode? Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry. Never mind. We'll get to that in a minute. It all started here. Archer and me both started wanting to kill people at this moment.
But it is interesting that they did it so early in season 3 as well, because it's letting them know that this is such a dangerous place. They've gone 2 years without any crew member dying, and then basically almost as soon as they get into the Expanse, people start dying.
Mm. And it's only the first of many, unfortunately. Yeah. But you have to expect that because they basically have the mindset that they're going to war. So they're prepared.
And more importantly, this gives the viewer the information they need to know. No, we're going to war. This isn't gonna end well for everybody.
True. Very true. So yeah, that was the first one. And the one that really kind of sets, well, as far as screen, not counting the book that happened between Anomaly and the episode prior to it. Last full measure, read it. Anyway, it sets the mindset and the attitude of Archer for the rest of this season. And he continues to progress on how far he will go to get things done. And you can see how uncomfortable Malcolm is when he finally lets that poor Osarian out of the airlock without killing him. And at that moment, we all start to wonder, as a viewer, would he have killed him? Would he have?
I think he would have.
I think he would have too.
I do too.
But, we're not quite at that point yet as far as viewers. We just are wondering at that point. So there's our first death. Shall we move on to the next 2 deaths, which happen in Regine? And I had forgotten a lot of the details of this episode until I watched it again. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this one. And I actually liked it better. I didn't hate it the first time around, but I was annoyed by it a lot of the time because I'm just like, why doesn't someone just punch this woman in the throat? But
oh, you must have listened to our old episode.
And so, but knowing the outcome of it helped a lot more this time around for me because I wasn't as frustrated. But, basically the 2 unnamed humans are shot by a Xindi bioweapon when coming to retrieve Regine from the brig so that they can get these scans, so to speak. I guess it's her way of scanning. I don't really understand exactly what she did, but whatever she did, it was giving them genetic information on the humans and apparently one Vulcan as well. So that they could start their biological warfare research. That's fun. So the thing that I am not clear on, even after watching this episode, is which humans were the ones that died from which weapon. Because there were a couple of different weapons. There was the standard sort of, phaser type gun. And then there was another one that they just basically shot a blob into the wall and then all of these projectiles came out of it.
So I definitely think that killed somebody.
I think that's the
I hope
case,
that killed somebody.
You're so bloodthirsty.
No, I just mean if that didn't work, then what's the use? It's such a great weapon. It's got to kill. So if people are going to die anyway, and we know they die, that's got to be one of the deaths.
Yes, because there were many people who were shot during that particular unauthorized boarding of the Zindi, but I feel that it was the two of the three people that were hit with the projectiles. What do you think, Brandon?
I agree, absolutely. That weapon was pretty cool. It was a pretty neat weapon, and I think that's where they were probably killed. So the crew members, and it's again here we got this this strike force that's happening on the ship, and that's the frustrating thing about seeing that picture online with that stats. Like I want to say this again later, but I just want to say it now too. Is that Archer went 2 seasons without anybody dying, and it wasn't until he put himself in a war zone and he's on the offensive where his first crew members started to die,
And he had no choice. He didn't you say he put himself in a war zone.
It wasn't because of bad decision making that these crew members died.
No, he was forced to go to war.
Right.
They blew up, they cut a hole through Florida and much of the rest of the eastern seaboard.
Right.
Yeah, 17 million people died. So
yes, we're going to read every name of that later.
Every single name. Buckle in. This is going to be a 15-hour podcast.
Yes. So. There's a lot of C. Smiths, though. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We're only going to read the same name once.
Collectively, there are 27 C. Smiths. Anyway, so those are the two in Rajin. The next one up is Similitude. We all know what the death is in that one. And I thought this time when I've watched it, I wouldn't be as emotionally effective. Oh, no. I was still ugly crying. There was sobbing. I just grabbed like a box of Kleenex to start with and just waited. And they really just make you like Sim so much.
Yeah.
It is so
they really
hard.
do a good job. I mean, the episode doesn't have the same impact once you know the whole outcome.
Oh, it does. It absolutely doesn't.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
From start to finish. Because you start off with that cold open, right, of him, and then you're confused. All of that disappears once you've seen it once. But you still feel for Sim through the episode, even though you know what the episode's about, So, yeah, I agree with you. You still have the crazy feelings towards the end. It's just the cold open, and that whole episode, to me, is really actually great, but it loses something a second watch because you know what's happening during the cold open.
Yeah, well, my feeling is even seeing it for the first time, I'm like, okay, there's no way that Trip is actually dead, so this is either a trick or that's not Trip. That was my first thought.
Oh, I believed it. I'm dumb, but I believed it.
I did not believe it at all because I thought, I've heard nothing about a cast member leaving. There's no way they killed someone off in this season. So
I thought it was the JJ verse Trip.
Shots fired.
Ouch. Ouch. Yeah.
See, I questioned at first putting this name on the list, but I'm glad that we're talking about it because this is one where Archer made the decision for somebody to die, even though to me he's not a member of the crew because he's a clone. I'm not one for clone rights, at least not yet. All right, so I got to go through a little bit more legal interpretation before I'm all about giving clones rights. But I mean, that's also something that's extremely far away. I understand they've cloned sheep and stuff like this, but we're not there yet. Where every other person on the street I'm gonna meet's a clone, right? So it's still science fiction. So my interpretation is this person was created specifically for the sole purpose of harvesting organs, right? And this person wouldn't have been created had they not needed this, and I understand that this person has emotions, has been represented in the show, but again, this thing was created for the sole purpose of creating an organ so that Trip could have a transplant.
Well, luckily, we've come so far that by the time we get to a point where we could create a sim to kill a sim for organs, we could probably just create the organs and not have to go through the whole thing. So we'll probably never actually be confronted with this concept, I guess.
I mean, if they could put an ear on a mouse's back.
Right.
Oh, please, let's not go back there. Anyway.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Back there?
Yeah, back there. Yeah,
right
exactly.
Back.
Let's
right
not go
back
back to the ear.
I hear you.
Oi, 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 oi.
See last episode.
Off the rails. Okay, so here's my feelings about Sim. He wasn't officially a member of the crew. However, he was integral to the crew in that if it were not for his idea, they would still be in that big old cloud of gunk and they would have died there. Because it was his idea to do a fusion overburn with the 2 shuttles to get some forward momentum so that the Enterprise could get out of there.
Trip would have come up with the 2.
How do you know?
No, I'm with Brandi on this one. I mean, I don't like that Sim died either, but he had to go.
Yeah, well, he did. And the thing that's so heartbreaking is that he even thinks about leaving. He even thinks about escaping. And then he realized why.
Where am I going to go?
Yeah, no, the only hang up I have is, yes, clones should have rights, but he was created simply for the organs, which is where the confusion comes in. But whatever. I mean, you couldn't have 2 trips on the ship for the rest of the time anyway.
No, you couldn't. And that's not the point we're trying to make here anyway. My personal feeling is, yes, it was a clone, but it was a sentient being that was, yes, he had all of Trip's memories and such, but he was also creating new memories with the people with whom he was interacting. And so to me, he was a living, breathing organism. It doesn't matter for what purpose he was created or how he was created. He, in my opinion, was still a living, sentient being, and it was heartbreaking to lose him, regardless of, what the end result was always going to be. So,
Right.
Ugly crying. So much ugly crying. And it didn't even start when the actual death was coming. It was at the point where he is, talking to, saying, well, I've heard that there's this enzyme and it could possibly help me to live longer than, and et cetera, ad nauseum. And that's when I start getting upset. And then when he's saying goodbye to T'Pol, basically, that's when it's just okay, just give me a towel because the Kleenex aren't cutting it. So
yeah, it's a bit of a rough scene.
It's heartbreaking. Probably.
We'll probably talk about my heartbreaking scene today too.
Yes. Okay, so the next episode, Chosen Realm, an unnamed human female, is killed by a Trianon organic explosive, and the resulting decompression that happens after said explosion. This is a hard episode for me to watch because I am a really big opponent of religious zealots. And it's just, I do love the way it ends because basically it's like, oh yeah, here's the peace you wanted. Everybody's dead. Bye. And they just leave him there. But this one is just, the poor woman was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then there's Archer's fake death, but we knew it was a fake death, so it's not really technically
real.
a death.
See, I always thought that this was the first episode where somebody died, because this one was such a this death made a lot of impact on me the first time I watched the show, because the way that she looks up before the guy blows up, and she sees what's going on, I don't know, for some reason this is the one that sticks with me, and this is the one that I always thought was the first death in Enterprise, but it turns out not to be. I like this episode a lot. It's a challenging one to watch, but we talked about it for our season 3 retrospective with Heather Barker, and it's not a popular episode, and I think a lot of people don't like it because of the religious zealots. But I mean, to me, that's what's interesting about it, is because it makes it look so ridiculous. Because what is it? Days of the week or something like that?
It's how many days that it took for the sphere builders to create the universe.
Yeah,
they
6
say
days or 7.
no, they say 9, and the heretics say 10. And I didn't say I didn't like the episode. I just said it was difficult for me because I really bothered by it.
But I do think a lot of people dislike the episode.
I think a lot of people do dislike this one.
There's a lot of people who dislike it because it just goes over the top with it.
Yeah, but how much are we seeing stuff like that happening in real life, even now?
All over the place. People get into crazy arguments over the simplest things.
And
when
it
comes to religion.
It doesn't
matter. The reality is, this season was a 9/11 talking point, which was very religious based. So,
yeah, it's just, Yeah. So that was
this is the death that has the most impact on me in the
Yeah.
season for some reason. I don't know why, but this is the one that I always think of.
Well, and the way that I when I felt how I felt when I watched it is I knew that the death was coming, and she's actually just looking at this guy with curiosity, and then it looks like she's gonna offer help, like, are you okay? And then boom, and that's the end of her, and yeah, the big hole in the ship now.
Which makes it even harder. That, it's one thing when a soldier, gets killed in a firefight, they see it coming, but she had no idea.
No.
Yeah.
So it makes it even harder to witness that.
Yeah, it's a very moving scene and difficult to watch. The whole episode, like I said, is difficult for me, but I don't hate it. I think it's actually a really good episode and shows a lot of good things and has a lot of things to talk about and how humans deal with each other. And maybe they should take a lesson from this episode of Enterprise to just shut up and maybe listen for a second. Okay, so that is the first 5 deaths in this group. And those all happened during the year 2153 as far as the Earth calendar. We're going to move on to our next section, which is spread over 2153 to 2154, because a lot of these deaths, there are no specific dates on which they happened, so we're kind of guessing as far as which year it may fit into. So this one is going to be weird, because this one is actually not mentioned until season 4, and it's Patricia F. O'Malley, who is a human who, quote, died in a battle with a hostile species, end quote, which was mentioned by Archer in Storm. See, I did it again.
She did it again! That's great! I heard it this time!
Son of a motherless goat. I was really trying so hard not to say it. Stormfront Part 2. Dang it. I was practicing all week. Yeah. So, and the only reason that it's mentioned is because Archer has brought an Earthling from the past back to the Enterprise and puts her in Patricia's quarters. And, she asks, well, where is this woman? And that's what he says. She died in a battle with a hostile species.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it gets fishy, too, because this might even be one of the 18 that we talk about in the next one, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard to know. It's hard to tell, right? Because a lot of the people that we're talking about next, it's just a bulk group of people.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So that one doesn't really require a lot of discussion. So, because we didn't see it, or we may have seen it and we didn't know it.
Yeah.
So, let's move on to the one with the highest body count, which is Azadi Prime.
Right. Yeah. And then while we were doing a research for this, so I watched The Forgotten, and it was in The Forgotten that we learned that there was 18 people that died in this battle.
So
Right.
here's what's interesting. So I watched the Zodi Prime, and I couldn't believe that we had such low numbers. And then we found out, because Brandon watched the next one, that we didn't have low numbers.
Yeah. Well, there's damage in between as well. So it's Azadi Prime that damaged in The Forgotten. But yeah, so they talk about how 18 people died. So this Patricia F. O'Malley, she could have been one of the 18.
Exactly.
And that would be my guess.
Yeah. Well,
So-
we can attribute it to that, I would
Yeah,
think.
let's do that, because I think we'll come up with a total at the end of this, like how many people died under Archer's command.
Oh, I already have the total.
Oh, nice. So so we'll take off 1 off of that total, right?
Yeah, well, no. It's, yeah, actually, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
you
we'll
are
take
correct.
1 off that total. Because
Right.
let's put Patricia O'Malley
In with the 18.
In with the 18, yes.
And you know what I think of every time I hear Patricia F. O'Malley? Patrick would probably get it. I'm totally thinking the Aristocats every time I hear that name.
I love the Aristocats.
Because the O'Malley cat, right?
Yes.
Like, we got Pat O'Malley, O'Malley cat. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. So, apparently...
Everybody wants to be a cat.
Wow, we're not doing any justice to the memory of these dead fake people.
I'm sorry.
We have 3 named humans who died. Specifically, Jane Taylor and Kamada were in a section that was decompressed when it was hit, and they floated out into space. There was a third unnamed human in that group. There was 3 of them that we saw on screen that floated out into space. And then there was another one who caught on fire. So that was different than being in the decompressed section. And then the 13 other unnamed humans. Actually, let's put that down to 12, because now we're counting Patricia F. O'Malley as part of these deaths that we don't know specifically how they died, so we're just listing them as they were killed during a Zindi battle at Azadi Prom.
So I got to make one correction on this.
Yes.
So Jane Taylor wasn't one of the people that got sucked out into space.
Okay.
Because in The Forgotten, when Tripp's in the hallway and T'Pol brings him that device and he kicks it and he's getting mad, he's like, and right there is where we found Jane's body. Right? So they found her body. They had her body on the ship. So she wasn't one of the people that got sucked out into space. So yeah, it's
right.
Yeah, it's
my
interesting.
sources are incorrect.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's tough to get all. Where did you get the information from? Was it
Memory Alpha?
Memory Alpha, yeah.
Nice.
So we have to go in and correct Memory Alpha.
Yeah, let's do that right after the podcast.
Sure. So, yeah, if you watch this episode, though, you see bodies flying like left and right. So it's not surprising that this many, as I said before, I was amazed that there was such a low count at first.
Yeah.
And then we found out, oh, there wasn't, because in The Forgotten they mention all
Yeah,
these
right at
other
the beginning
people
of The
died.
Forgotten when they're having a ceremony.
Right,
Archer
because you
talks
see the
about
guy
those
like run
18.
down a gangway on fire and people getting shot over like banisters. You know how they do in all Star Trek shows? People just go flying.
Yep.
And then you do see the 3 bodies come flying out of the ship. So you do know there's at least 3. Oh, they could have been dead before they were blown out, but can attribute it
Possibly.
to that.
They probably... I don't know how quickly you die when exposed to space, because I've never,
You've never been there? I've been there. Yeah.
Well,
it's a
apparently
nice
you
place.
don't have to die if you're Princess Leia. You can just float back in and be fine.
You know, she's strong in the Force. Well, and apparently...
Strong in the whatever writing you want to call
Well,
it.
we saw that too in Discovery, right? I mean, she tricks the computer to shoot her across. There's no force field saving her at that moment.
Yeah, and in the book
Yeah, but that's a few
Last Measure...
seconds.
Measure.
Shut up.
Not me. Not me
Tomb
this
and
time.
comb. Anyway, in that book, there is a sequence where the part of Archer's party who is trapped on one ship and trying to get back onto their shuttle, the docking ports aren't compatible, so they have to basically blast themselves out through space and into the shuttle.
Right. Which, scientifically speaking, is impossible. But
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
We're not in it for the science. We're in it for the...
Well, the way that they
Glory.
did it, it was plausible. As far as, it's not like they just opened the door and jumped. They actually caused the door to blast them out with atmosphere. So,
Which is what I interpret that Burnham did in Discovery as well. She used the sucking motion to force her through.
yeah.
Unlike Princess Super Leia.
Okay,
No,
please stop.
I get
This is not a Star Wars podcast.
I get the point. It's just back to the death. So we had all these deaths, right? Because it's just scientifically impossible for any of that to happen, period. But everything would expand so rapidly, your body would be torn to bits.
Right.
Right.
So,
Now, I checked something out while we're talking here. So 18 is a lot of people to die at one time. Okay. Now, I wanted to check something out. So in 2151, which I think was in the first season of the show, Archer says there was 81 humans, a Vulcan, and a Denobulan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 83 people, right? But then they got the Makos on, right? And while we're talking here, I'm going to see if I can find how many Makos came on the ship. I don't know if they ever mentioned the number of Makos, but I mean, so 18 out of 81 is almost a quarter, right? Almost 25%. So
right.
I don't know. Like that's a fair chunk.
So about this episode of Zodi Prime, there's no real overly memorable death. The fight scene itself is what's memorable.
Yeah,
out of
the
this episode,
massive damage. To the
Right.
Enterprise.
They don't. Yeah. And that lasts till season 4. They don't fix that until season 4. Sometimes.
They don't have time.
Nope. They're busy. They're very busy.
So busy.
And, it shows in the death count.
Well, I'd say that the 3 that got sucked out, that was pretty memorable.
Yeah, but we don't even know what their names were. You know what I mean? Like,
We know who two of their names were, or
no,
one
because
of their names.
Didn't we? Yeah, we just found out that that's not even true.
Yeah, but they didn't say
And Larry
Kamada.
and Bob. It was Larry and Bob.
Yeah, Larry,
Bob.
Bob, and Kamada were the ones who got sucked out.
Okay, perfect. But no, okay. So the scene itself is memorable, but it doesn't have a huge impact on me. That's all I'm saying.
That's because you have no heart.
Okay.
That's probably true, but it's still a valid opinion.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Even if I have no heart.
I just said you were heartless.
I'm a horrible person.
No, you're not.
Moving on.
I don't see a number here for how many Makos there were.
I don't think it was ever really
So,
established.
they probably never said
Yeah, I don't think they ever said it in universe.
Let's just say 50.
Yeah, let's say 15. That
So we're
sounds
still
like
at
a good
100.
number.
We have to get to 67 deaths.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Spoiler alert.
yeah, the next one, the next three in a row actually are all Makos, and
Yes.
Okay, but I got to pause. I got to talk about the Forgotten for a second.
please do.
So I told you the parts where rips my heart out. So so like a second place ripping my heart out moment is when Trip is in the hallway with DePaul and he's talking about having to write that letter and he keeps thinking about his sister and how he just cracks at that point and he finally learns he's finally accepting his sister's death and realizes that she was important to him. That part rips my heart out every time I see it.
yeah, it is
Oh,
heartbreaking.
yeah, no, that's heartbreaking. I didn't. Okay.
not
so I
so
did have a
heartless
moment
as
like
you
that.
led us to believe.
No,
eh?
well, no, because when Brandon said it, I was thinking there was going to be a specific death, and the scene of the death was going to be what was heartbreaking. But this isn't. This is a little different.
No,
yeah,
you're right.
it is different.
It is different.
All right then, going through to our three Mako deaths. They kind of happen pretty much in a row. The first one happens in the council, and it was Corporal F. Hawkins. We never had first names for any of them.
No, they just give him little letters.
Yeah.
But this
Frankenfurter
drives me.
Hawkins.
His death seems so pointless and unneeded, because not the writing wise, but if you watch that scene, the arm is coming in to get before it grabs him, and nobody can see it though. This thing is massive when it finally gets to him. The fact that no one can see the arms until they get to him drove me crazy.
I never really thought of it that way, but I just remember thinking, you know, the thing is they could have shot at it, yes, but then they risk hitting Hawkins, and so I understand why they didn't fire at it, and then he was just gone. He was vaporized.
Yeah, no, it was a split second. Once it had him,
quick,
it was
yeah.
over.
Yeah.
But like they, I forget who's on the ship telling them it's coming, but maybe Mayweather.
It was probably Mayweather because he was
So I
the
think
pilot.
Mayweather was yelling at them. It's coming from when he's giving them a direction. They're all looking up and they're like, "I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I don't see anything." Oh, look!
Well, Reed was there.
And Reed was saying he
right?
couldn't
'Cause
see
Reed
it.
was the one.
And then it grabs it. Basically, it's there. They're like, "Oh, there it is! It's this massive, like 3-section giant arm, you know, from like Dr. Octopus," and nobody notices until the last second it grabs Hawkins. Then phew, he's gone.
Yeah.
Then they start firing at it. It wouldn't have mattered if they fired at it even with Hawkins because they couldn't do anything to it. It wasn't until the shuttle pod shot it that it made a difference anyway. But what is interesting about this death is this is a very pivotal moment. Pivotal moment. Pivotal moment. Yeah. Pivotal. Whatever.
Pivotal.
Moment for Reed. Because this is where we get the speech where he talks about on any given mission, there's an acceptable loss rate of 20%. And you expect him to say something along the lines of, well, that's not acceptable, but he doesn't. What he says is, well, we're way above that now.
Yeah. And he even says
Okay.
we're getting just a little too used to losing people.
Yes.
He's just
Right,
really
right.
upset.
Well, they would be above 20% because they had
Yeah.
18 in the last episode, plus 5 before that, or where I haven't been counting along here. So we're approaching.
Yeah, well,
25.
there was 18, and then there was 5 before that, so that's 23.
So we're at 23%. And then we still have deaths to go. But to me, that's a key moment for his character.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. And because they've had so much trouble with him and Hayes have had a lot of trouble together,
Yeah.
right? They were arguing and all.
Yeah, they're too busy trying to measure things rather than actually do their jobs and
Yes,
respect each
which
other.
somewhat changes in a moment.
It does. It does. In fact, with this death, it changes.
Yes.
So, yeah. Alrighty. So, the next one. This one was hard for me because I had finally gotten to the point where I liked him. But our Mako Major Hayes, in Countdown, he gets shot by a Zindi reptilian while he's being transported off the ship after rescuing Hoshi. And he does not make it.
This is amazing.
It is. But I have a few things to say about it. First, this is where we do get that conversation between him and Reed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which make you really like him more and like Reed more. Because he says, I don't like putting anyone under someone else's command. And Reed basically says, I did the best I could. And he kind of agrees and whatever. Then he moves on and he goes to the mission, right? So now he's on the mission and he sends out Hoshi and I forget the guy's name first, because they can only teleport 2 at a time. So he tells him, can you hold your position? He says yes. He holds down suppressive fire while Hoshi and the other guy get transported out. Then the girl to his left gets shot in the shoulder. She makes it. Oh, they said her name, and I meant to remember and write it down, and I didn't.
Susan.
Yeah, her
Sure.
name's Susan.
Fine. That's great. I like Susan. So, but she falls back into the other guy's, chest, because he's standing right behind her. And so they're not putting down any suppression fire anymore because they're distracted. Hayes holds them off long enough for them to teleport out. And then as he's teleporting out, he takes a shot through the chest. The only thing that drives me crazy about this is, maybe I'm wrong, but haven't we established somewhere else in the universe that you can't be shot while teleporting?
So I actually just watched D Space Nine Season 4 Hippocratic Oath today. And in that episode, O'Brien and Bashir crash land on that planet with all those Jem'Hadar who are trying to get the Quetzal White out of their systems. And O'Brien puts a distraction. He plugs something in and causes an explosion and beams out, and the Jem'Hadar shoots at him, and it goes right through him. Now, I attribute that to better transporter technology is how I would attribute that in my head. Right? So that's later on, and this is still early on in transporter use. And remember, in Broken Bow, they're like, this is safe for biomatter? We're talking like groceries, right? So they're still not used to transporting people, so that's how I attribute it. We'll talk about it again when we get to the episode Daedalus in just a little bit, but in the episode Daedalus, Quinn Erickson says the initial transporters took, I can't even remember the number, he said I think he said a minute and a half to fully cycle, right? So this is closer to the early transporters than what we got in Next Gen, so that's how I would attribute
Okay, fair
that.
enough. Because I only bring it up because, and I know books aren't canon, but in the book for Discovery, there's actually a big part of that book, or a big part of one of the chapters, is Saru is very calm and loves transporting because he knows the moment it starts, he's invincible.
Yeah, but again, this is many years later.
Well, that's still 100 years.
It's a
That's
century
still
later.
It's just why I
later.
thought of it, because
Yeah.
I remember that, and I don't ever remember seeing anyone actually getting hit. But yeah, I guess in my head I can wrap my head around the fact that this is older technology, so that it's earlier in the cycle. It doesn't work as quickly, so he's still kind of whole when he got hit.
Yeah.
The only thing that drives me crazy is if you watch the scene, the shot goes straight through him, but they never really. It looks more like just a wound on the front and not a through and throw.
But it is, but it's the damage that's going through his heart. I picture that weapon, so he's slowly disintegrating. And then he gets shot, and it goes through him. And it's not doing damage to, his skin and his body. It's doing damage to all his internal organs is where the damage is happening. Because it's it's partially going through his body. Right? So that's how I've always interpreted it, is that it's he's partially phased out, he's partially transported out, but not completely. So, because if you look at a transporter, it looks like it does it from the outside
Right,
in.
okay, fair enough.
So his skin and stuff could have been gone already.
Right, it would have been phased.
If you want to look at it that way.
Yeah,
Sorry, what's that?
That would have already phased enough to not be affected. Fair.
To not be affected, but that his heart and his lungs are still there. And so that's why when he gets fully retransported, he's like, "Ugh!" And that, like, that's this first sound that he
Right.
makes is because, like, his lungs are, like, gone or whatever.
Yeah, because he doesn't die instantly either. We do actually see a scene with him talk to Reed again
Yeah.
afterwards.
Well, and when he's dying, he asks for his last supper of donuts. Oh, that was the deleted scene.
Horrible. But we do see a bit of a wound on his chest. It just doesn't look deadly. But I can take your explanation and say, yeah, I can believe that.
Then we
Yeah.
are all in agreement. Excellent. All right, our third and final Mako death happens in the episode 0 Hour. It is M. Forbes. I like to imagine that he was actually named for Michelle Forbes. Simpson.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, that's what I was
We
thinking
all
too.
went there. We all went there in our minds. And he worked security, and he was stabbed by a Zindi reptilian and then fell really far to the bottom of the Zindi weapon. So there was no hope of that, him coming out of that. Because if the stabbing didn't kill him, the fall definitely did.
I always am bothered by, like, those big falls in those types of stations, you know, like the Emperor and the Death Star, or, you know, like just those kind of things where they fall these long distances, because it's like, on Earth it makes sense because our gravity is the ground, but I mean, like, even if it's like a space station or something like this, like, okay, all the gravity just happens to be at the bottom of the round circle as well. I don't know, just for conceptually when it's happening, you're like, okay, yeah, somebody falls, they're gonna die when somebody falls that far. But it's like, would the gravity work that way on a spherical space station?
Well, no,
I don't know.
but we question it then. They shouldn't be walking upright either. Everyone should be walking at angles, much like we do from the Earth.
Exactly, yeah, you'd be
But they never do. They're all just
2001 it's the
standing
opposite,
upright
right?
in the station with the bottom below them. So
Why do we watch this stupid Star
I
Trek?
think that when it's a weapon the weapon isn't as big as the Earth. Okay, so I feel like it's not applicable for them to be walking around like they were on a planet.
Yeah, but if something's round, why would they have the gravity at the bottom of a round object?
and how are they creating it?
Because they didn't. I don't know. How did they create artificial gravity on the Enterprise? How did?
Magic.
yeah.
Everyone's boots were magnetic.
There's plating. There's
Watch
gravity
the
And
Expanse,
magnetic
Patrick.
boots.
right? So
Magnetic
when
boots.
they're walking on the
So many magnetic boots.
when they're walking on the deck, there's gravity plating in the deck. They've talked about gravity plating, but if you're falling in a circular object, like, yeah, okay, so maybe the deck that you're on has it. But
You
if
would
you're
float
falling
then
down a big long
until you
shaft.
get to another plate, and then poof.
Maybe it was those.
I don't know, maybe
Maybe
it
it
would
was
suck
those
it
rings
in.
around the outside that was creating the gravity, and so it was,
But
that's
then
why
you should
it went
get
all the way
sucked to
down.
them.
Could be.
I don't know. I honestly
I don't
don't
know.
care at this point. I really don't.
Honestly, to be perfectly honest, I've never once. Thanks, Brandon. You've ruined every falling scene from every space show I've ever watched in one shot, because I've never even thought about it or cared. And now I'm arguing with Brandi about it.
Don't care.
Remember that scene in North Star when they had that phase from this one shot to the other, and they did an iris, and it's like, what are you doing with the iris?
They did an iris wipe. Oh.
No, it was a transition.
Yeah.
one.
Yes,
That
it was.
I remember
But
it was.
thanks,
It
you
was a
ruined that
transition.
one too. By the end of this podcast, I just won't like any episode.
Yeah, we're ruining everything for everyone here on Warp 5. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so 0 Hour also had a second death. It was an unnamed human engineer. And he was hit by an energy disruption from one of the sphere builders, because those women are jerks. So why was it all women? Something. I mean, you see the one guy, and he was a criminal, or so he said. And
Well, in the beginning, wait, there was one guy, but didn't he end up dead?
yeah, well, see, that's the one who was in the pod in the anomaly. Yeah.
Harbinger.
Yeah.
And so,
Harbinger.
and he was put there to basically, they figure out he was put there to see how long he could exist.
And that's why there's only women left.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's
They
like,
keep just sending the men off to go dead.
yeah,
Go.
but how did they reproduce?
We don't know. It could be asexual.
Okay, so I've always interpreted them like the aliens on the Cage, right? Like they're all considered men, even though the main Telosian is played by a woman. They're considered like men, I think, in the episode The Cage, right? Which we were just talking with Patrick. He's going to watch again soon.
Yeah, it's
but
been a while.
You
Of
know what I'm
course,
talking about, right, Brandi?
and I always just felt
Yeah,
like that was
so-
an assumption, because how could they really know?
Well, same with this. Like, these could be, like, genderless individuals. I mean, we had, what was the Next Generation episode?
Yeah.
The Outcast, right? Like, they were all played by women, but they were all genderless. So.
Yeah, well, we also had Odo's mother in Deep Space Nine, but we all attribute Mother.
Mother, which Deep Space Nine did you watch?
A lot of people attribute that to because it was played by a woman, that it was like his mother figure, you know. But it's
The
right,
female
but
changeling. But she also had
but
breasts.
she's just a changeling. And I keep saying
Right.
it's just a changeling. We don't know what it was.
Right.
Brandi is so bored right
Brandi
now.
I brought it up. It was my fault.
That's a legitimate discussion.
It is. See, the female changeling is female because she has
Yeah.
breasts. I
But
don't
she
know, like,
made
that's my
herself that.
determination.
Yeah. Well,
They all just go to a
exactly.
big pool and asexually procreate in my world.
okay. I think it's us putting our perceptions of gender onto alien species that causes the problem. So,
But isn't that what I just said in a much clumsier way?
oh, is that what you were saying? Okay.
Yes.
Well, then, good point, Patrick.
Well, because if you... forget it. To get any deeper in this would just get me in trouble at some point. So let's move on.
Okay. So, yeah. Now we're into the last death that is attributed to the year 2154, which is Burroughs, an armory officer who was killed by the Quinn Erickson subspace entity in Daedalus.
Oh, this was such a cool episode. So this is one of the ones that I got to rewatch. And so Quinn Erickson's the guy that basically invented transporter technology and was expanding it, and he was trying to come up with a way that they could transport from planet to planet rather than just ship to ship. And he lost his son in a transporter accident, so they go and try and get him back from this area of space that's like a void of space, the Barrens, I think they called it. And he's going through, and because of this phasing that his body is, it's causing all these disruptions, and it basically melts Burroughs' face and whatnot and kills him. And then when they flip him over, he kind of looks like he went through an anomaly, like one of the anomalies from the Expanse. Like his face is all messed up and stuff. So yeah, so that's how he dies in this episode here.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're just like, what is really going on? And actually, Quinn is the son. Emery is the doctor. Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Yeah.
Quinn was the one who was trapped in subspace. And they do get... Well, technically, he dies too, because they do manage to rematerialize him-ish.
But he
He
wasn't,
wasn't crew. No.
Yeah.
But that was sad. There's just so much sad in that one.
Yeah. Every time I watch it, I'm surprised that they rematerialize his body, and he just looks like him. You know, like they're talking about while they're doing it. If you rematerialize him, he won't last long. But when they rematerialize him, he looks
Yeah,
just
you would
like
expect him
normal.
to be like kind
You
of
know, and
drippy or something.
Yeah, it always surprises me. Drippy.
Melty? I don't know.
Runny?
Runny. Like Camembert. I'm so sorry.
Like a gummy bear left. Bag of gummy bears left on the...
No, not
the
gummy
dashboard
bears.
in a hot day.
Camembert cheese. It can be very runny.
I understand, but I'm moving this forward.
Oh,
into a
okay, gummy
creepier
bears.
Section.
Yes, that's fine.
Left in the car. In the heat.
In the heat.
Middle of summer.
Delicious.
They are.
Not really.
My friend just had a birthday party, and he rented a movie theater, and we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And so, like, there's that last scene when the principal goes and sits down on the bus, and there's that girl with the big glasses, and she's like, "You want a gummy bear? It was in my pocket all day, so it's all warm and soft." And he's like,
I'm sorry, Brandi. That was my fault.
anyways. Tangent.
Okay, now we come to year 2155. And two of these we're still talking about because they did die. They were resurrected, but they did die. And that, of
Yes.
course, was Hoshi Sato, and Trip, And they were both killed by a silicon-based virus during the episode Observer Effect.
Such a good
I love
episode.
this episode, actually.
This is so
I really love
amazing.
it. I think it's amazing and enjoyable. And it gives
Yeah.
the cast a chance to do something different without abandoning their characters at the same time. So I really appreciate this episode very much. And so, yeah, I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, what, are they really dead? That was one of the best parts for me, is when they're dead and the observers go into them and they're talking. It's just like, oh, this is so wrong.
Well, they're not dead at that point. They injected themselves with a sedative, and that's when the observers went into them and they sat up.
Oh, right. Okay,
Right?
I remembered that incorrectly. But I thought that they had reanimated them actually too before they actually were resurrected. Anyway.
Oh, they did. Yes, they did. I just watched it today too. Yes, after they die. That's right. Yes, Trip gets up and he's like, you're right.
I
Jeez
didn't
Louise,
misremember.
I just watched this thing like 6
Brandon
hours
did from
ago.
6 hours ago.
Oh my goodness.
So I don't remember.
Yes, now I know what you're talking
I
about,
remember
yes.
the overall themes and don't remember the episode hardly at all. So I have nothing to add.
Oh,
Which is good because I won't bring
I
us on a
really do
tangent
love this
now.
episode.
Yeah.
The more I watch this episode, the higher it goes up on my list. I don't know if it's passed as my favorite yet, but this might be my
All right,
second.
so if we
favorite
just keep
episode of
making
the
you
series.
watch it, eventually it'll be your favorite episode
Right.
of any TV show ever.
Good to know. Good to know.
So yeah, we talk with them. They die, and then they can, Archer, because he keeps trying to save Hoshi. He takes off his gloves. They decide to risk contact with him, and he convinces them to save them and save the crew. He convinces the Organians to save the crew. So yeah, it's great. I love
It
this
is
episode.
great. I do enjoy it.
But they come back
Yeah,
to life.
but they
so.
did die.
So we do count them as dead, but they probably are not counted in that 67% or whatever.
No, they're probably counted 4 times in that 67% because I don't know how they got to that number.
True.
Yeah. And then one final death in the year 2155 on Terra Prime. Engineer Massaro commits suicide after being revealed as a spy for Terra Prime.
Yeah, this is a crazy one because he puts a phaser to his head and shoots himself in the head right outside the elevator shaft, the turbo lift, right in front of Archer. Because he thought he was doing the right thing, and he's like, "I'm sorry, just tell my mom I'm sorry," and then he just shoots himself, and it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's it makes you wonder why he felt like that was his only option. Was it because of what he was worried about the people in Terra Prime doing to him? Was he worried about what Starfleet was going to do to him? Why was death the better option there?
I think he just really regretted his actions, and I think he must have been, part of the reason that Elizabeth ended up being born. Like he might have stolen the DNA from them and caused this, this baby to be born who was very sick and whatnot, and to be used in this method. So I associate him being directly related to that,
Yeah.
Fair point.
which would be pretty
Ultimate
traumatic.
depression at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so here's my other one. This scene here when Trip comes in and right after Elizabeth dies, and he's talking with T'Pol. She's in her quarters praying, and he's saying the people in the Federation Council want to come to the funeral for Elizabeth, and he's just breaking up. Oh man, this is the saddest moment in Star Trek.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I
this one
cry
hurts.
when other people cry, but when a man cries, it really gets to me more because, men are all raised with this boys don't cry mentality. And so, but Trip was never like that. He does a lot of crying, which is one of the reasons why I love Trip. But yeah, that one just makes me a mess. There's ugly crying in that episode as well.
Yeah, so good. Anything else you guys want to say about the ones that we call the real dead?
Nope.
No,
We
so
have-
and then the series ends and we don't hear anything ever again from the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
no
it.
more. That's it.
Thank you
We're
for
all done.
watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good night.
We can't, guys.
I know. It's wishful
Yeah, we got one
thinking.
more to talk about.
But
We got one more, but if you want to accept the books as canon, it's not really true. But in the year 2161, Commander Charles Trip Tucker is killed while sacrificing himself to save Captain Archer.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll tell you, I love the books. You guys know I love the books, right? But I'll tell you why I think he dies, right? Because even in the books, he goes to Section 31, he goes on this mission to Romulus and stuff like this. Are they really going to make a computer program that you can use later on? Something that people frequently use? Like, Troy has used this program, right? She's talking to Riker about it. Oh, have you been the chef yet? You should be the chef. You should try that. That's a good part of the program. Like, this is this event that they would want to keep secret because of Trip going into Section 31, and they're going to make a computer program, like a holosuite program.
Yeah,
over
because it
I
totally
don't know.
reinforces the lie that Trip is dead. Because Section 31 is never going to let that information get out, even 150 years in the future.
So I didn't read the book, so I didn't know he goes into Section 31.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, spoilers.
No, but in seriousness, that's the story. Is the way they write off this death not being real is that it's a fake death, so he can go to Section 31, which is very plausible.
Yes.
Except for the fact that it's completely unjust to the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Reed would make sense to go into Section 31 eventually.
Yeah.
And he does get involved within the books as well.
You can-
But, I like the retcon because I love the books, and I didn't like how Trip died in this episode.
Agree.
and it's
Nobody
silly.
likes
So,
how Trip died. Nobody.
No, they don't.
Nobody.
But it happened.
Except for Rick
And
Berman.
in my opinion, it's too close to the historical. Its attempt is to be too close to the historical accuracy of how the Federation started, and to write him into a death that didn't really happen kind of cheapens that to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I hate the episode anyway. Don't think I'm trying to defend this episode by any stretch. But to write him in that way, it just hurts the character, in my opinion.
Shame. Patrick loves These Are the
That's
Voyages.
it. All right, it's out. I love them. They're my favorite episode of Star Trek ever.
Yeah.
Get a room. You and
We're
These
getting
Are the Voyages,
married.
Just get a room.
Here's
I'm
my
marrying
thing, though.
The episode.
Here's my thing. We never see the body.
All right.
I'm just saying, we never
In
see
my
the
world,
body.
he's dead.
Doesn't he dies? They see him dead, and he's like they.
No,
push him
he
into
wasn't
that,
dead. He winked at them before they pushed him into that bio thingy, whatever it is that Dr. Phlox uses.
I think George Lucas went back and added that.
No, he was alive when he went into that, and he was talking about how he was going to be fine. And then next thing we know, he's being reported as dead. We never saw a dead body. Go back and watch it, guys. There's not a dead body.
No, I believe you, and I know exactly what you're saying. I'm just teasing. I love the books, and it does work very well. Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels did a great job of taking that episode and writing a very plausible story. It's very plausible. I'm not saying it's not plausible at all. I'm just saying I don't know that I buy it because this computer program exists, right?
Well, I look at computer programs 100 and odd years in the future the same way I look at history books written 100 odd years in the future. How do we know that's what really happened? How do we know this isn't an interpretation? Right. You have logs, yes, that may say the bare bones of what happened, but there's a lot of extrapolation that would have gone on into making that computer program.
Yeah, but the misinterpretation of a death is a little... One this important would be a little hard for me to believe was an accident. So the only way...
And then if you go by the books, a 7-year gap as well.
The only way that...
Or 6-year gap.
That program could be... It would have to be intentional. That he was killed off in that program to hide his involvement in Section 31.
Yeah. That could be it. Yeah. Because
it couldn't be a mistaken interpretation. He's too important of a person on this ship to have accidentally got his death wrong.
No, I know that.
By so much.
What I'm saying is that where the season ends with Terra Prime, and then they have this tacky
afterward.
They have
that one episode that's not canon, and then all those books that aren't canon.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there's 8 years that happens between, 6 years that happens in between the events of Terra Prime and the events in These Are the Voyages. That's 6 whole years. We don't know what happened during those 6 years. We don't.
Right, but if you go to the books, they've taken Trip's death and brought it closer to Terra Prime.
Oh, really?
Right?
Well, then that's...
Yes. So they've brought it basically almost at that point, right? Because let me grab... Here, I'll
No,
grab
I
my
believe
notebooks.
you. It's,
Too late. He's gone.
It's just that I would...
And he's quick.
I would think, just like how...
So I've got here the Romulan War, which takes place in 2156, and there's a couple of books in between, right? So even there's 5 years before this death, and there's still lots of books after that. So they moved up Trip's death. So by that inconsistency, this computer program has 6 years difference from when his death happened otherwise. So
Well, and I can I can explain that in my mind with that being Section 31 altering the program, or just writing the program to begin with, making sure that this death happened at a different time so that nobody suspects that Trip was still alive and working for Section 31. Just like how Starfleet sealed all the records of trips to the Mirror Universe. So every time someone ends up in the Mirror Universe, it's like, I didn't know that there was this. There's no record of this.
No one's ever heard of the spore drive either.
Yeah, exactly. It's called classified.
But those year gap inconsistencies are a problem.
yeah, that's a big gap. To have 6 or 7 years is a really
It
big
is,
gap.
but not if you're 100 years in the future. And history has been rewritten to reflect what Section 31 wants it to say.
I don't know, like, nobody's disputing with a 7-year difference when, like, Abraham Lincoln died.
Yeah, well, at
you
this...
know? But Abraham Lincoln didn't go in Section 31. Abraham Lincoln wasn't a part of Section 31, I guess. So.
I'm just saying, Section 31 gets what Section 31 wants. That's all I'm saying, really.
It's canon. It happened on screen. It's on screen. It's
Even if it happened on a holodeck. Okay, so that makes our grand total of deaths 32. And that's counting... I did take the one out. It was 33, so it's 32.
So let's say 32 out of 100. That's 32%.
Yeah.
32%.
So
that's half of what this nonsense cracked article had.
Jerks.
If that's where it came from.
Right.
Brandi shakes her fist. That was written by someone who obviously hadn't actually watched all of Enterprise.
Well, I would like to see the article itself too, because there could be a reason for the ridiculously out of proportion number. It is
right.
cracked.
And again, all that I know is I've seen this go around through, Facebook groups every once in a while. You just see this
posted. Much like a
posted.
really bad holodeck program that puts a date of a death wrong. So, I don't even believe that. I think he died in the episode, and that's that. I just had to throw that in. But, no, I would like to see the art. If you read the article, there might be a reason for the ridiculous number, but because Cracked is like a Mad magazine, it's like it's a joke. It's not serious. The problem is people are now
I used to
sharing
read
it as
Cracked
though it
going
is.
up as a kid.
Yeah. No, I know what Cracked is. I grew up with it, so. But yeah, that's even so.
Crack is whack.
Crack is whack. Don't do crack.
Don't read Crack.
Cracked is whacked.
To be fair, I always liked Cracked better than Mad Magazine. Anyway, so...
Cracked is whacked.
Cracked.
There's our episode
I
title.
only read Mad Magazine.
I never read Mad. I only read Cracked growing up.
I read both. I liked Cracked better. Okay, so that pretty much ends our list. Does anyone have any final thoughts, Brandon? Any final thoughts?
I just want to go back to the beginning where, he went 2 years without anybody dying. I think Archer's a good captain. He didn't lose people until a war, and the majority of the people lost were in one really heavy battle. Like more than 50% of the people that were lost in one battle.
I got something to say about that.
Okay.
And it happened while he was taken prisoner.
But had he been in command, it probably still would have had significant losses.
For people to say he's a bad commander, he was actually taken prisoner because he didn't want to lose any more people, and the fight broke out where his ship, off in space while he's down on a planet being punched in the face, was heavily outgunned in unfamiliar space. So to
Right.
claim he's a bad captain over that is utter ridiculousness.
No.
T'Pol's the bad
Oh, Lord.
captain.
I didn't say that either. That's not what I was getting at.
Yeah,
But yes.
T'Pol is not a bad captain either, because regardless of who had been in command at the time, they would have suffered those heavy losses. They would have had that same battle.
Right.
So,
Well, maybe not.
They could have surrendered.
No, they could have never gotten into the battle because they weren't sitting there and he wasn't trying to get information out of them, and the whole events don't unfold that way, and they don't go and shoot them down. Hey, it's a fact. Why'd they go after them? Because they were there to look for the weapon, because Trip and Reed found the weapon in 25 minutes and Archer was gone for 2 hours. And they said, if you don't give us the information, we'll kill your crew. Then he says, I'll give you the information, but I'll only give it to Degra. And then they try and kill his crew anyway.
So it is Archer's fault.
Yes, but it's not his command. And the point is, I don't care if it's his fault or not. He's not a bad captain because of it, is my point.
That's right.
they have a funny way of
Go on
saying
for Archer.
it.
No, I never said he was bad. I didn't say DePaul was either. That was Brandon.
Oh my gosh. Are those your final thoughts, Patrick?
Sure.
Did you...
You're cracked.
And
I think we're all cracked at this point.
yeah, it's late here.
Yeah.
So
Were you done with your final thoughts, Brandon? Because Patrick interrupted you.
Yes, I am. Yeah,
Okay.
Archer's a
Yeah,
good captain.
I agree. Archer is a good captain, and with the whole season 3 arc with trying to find and stop the Xindi weapon, you are going to have losses. It's a miracle they didn't have more. And that's all I have to say about that. But talking about the deaths of crew members on the NX-01 is not the only thing that we've been talking about here on the network. So take a quick listen to this clip and see what else you may have missed on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Literary Treks.
I wouldn't say it's totally different, but I would say there's some difference to it. I did see some elements that reminded me of The Trouble with Tribbles, and certainly I'm at a piece of the action. I can see that too. It does have that comedy element, just like those episodes do. But I think this takes it a little further and is a little more slapstick. Than
very
those others.
slapstick.
So, but again, there's certain tones and certain elements that do remind me of those other episodes. So,
Warp 5.
I do want to mention also that just something that this came up when I was working on Nights of the Living Dead. George Romero hated the word zombie and didn't think of his creatures as zombies. But
yes,
and it's one of the reasons why there's only some overlap between what we saw in Night of the Living Dead and everything you just described from West African and Caribbean folklore. Because of that, the two, basically, you kind of got, undead peanut butter and zombie chocolate, and you wound up with what everybody now thinks of as zombies.
Meta Treks.
Just imagine the worst case scenario that could happen, and look at all the bad things that have happened in history. And then you realize, hey, even if the worst possible scenario unfolds, that's not too bad in the grand scheme of things right here in the present.
I was going to say, some people read Marcus Aurelius. Riker goes to the holodeck.
The 602 Club.
I definitely agree. I thought that the writer did a great job of portraying Han. And Han's a hard character to nail down because I think it was really hit and miss in the old legend stuff with Han. There were some books that really glorified him as a character and tried to turn him into something that he wasn't.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
So check out all these shows and join in the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, please be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and a written review. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. We can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, and most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website, or grab the RSS link as well.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send a show and select Warp 5, that will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Brandi, when you're not falling down in a weightless environment, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Brandywine12. Brandy's with an I and 12 is a number. You can also hear me popping up on the 602 Club from time to time. And I do a podcast with my lovely husband, Dave, called The Dark Corner Podcast, which you can find on darkcornerpodcast.com. And also, they're swearing in that, so please do not let children listen. Your ears will bleed. You should hear me when I get on a rant, guys. You don't even know yet. And also, you'll see me here and there on the Babel Conference. I don't have as much time to spend there as I used to, but I pop my head up once in a while.
Excellent. Patrick, where can people find you when you're not inhabiting other people's bodies, trying to determine if we're worthy of you to talk to us?
So when I'm not trying to figure that out, you can find me on the Babel Conference. I pop my head up in there once in a while. You can also find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's one word. The 5 is a number. And you can also find me elsewhere on the network when I podcast with my friend Amy on The Edge. So, Brendan.
Wasn't that my show?
Your show? It was your show. Once.
Oh, that's right, it was.
A while ago.
Not your show no more.
So, Brandon, where can people find you when I'm not shoving you out an airlock to get you off the edge?
You've had me crying because my co-host hates me. And you can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Shea. You can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network with my friends Chris and Tom, where we talk about Alfred Hitchcock movies on our podcast called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast.
Yay.
Yay. Not on the Babel Conference?
No, never. You never see him there.
Every once in a while, I poke my head up in the Babel Conference.
If you would all like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron on the network. A patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month, and we really appreciate any support you can give us and hope that you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
At this time, we would like to thank our wonderful associate producers of the show called Warp 5, which is what you're listening to. We couldn't do it without them. We need their support, and they support our show, but they also support the network as a whole. And our wonderful associate producers are as follows: Norman Seelau, Floyd Dorsey, Mike Morrison, Tim Cooper, Justin Ozer, Mark Flesso, and Chris Tribuzio. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all your wonderful support. And maybe we should tell everybody what we're planning on doing for the next couple
Let's
episodes.
do.
Yeah, it's way more fun than listing 17 million names.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next episode of Warp 5, we are planning on doing an episode about fathers for Father's Day. So, yeah, that's going to be what's coming up next. And the episode after that is going to be our Season 4 Part 2 retrospective, which is the Augment arc from the start of Season 4. And we'll have our guest, Chris Tribuzio, on for that one.
Sweet. Well, thank you for joining us again this week, Boomers. And as always, keep calm and boom on. Yeah, okay, so next one. Chosen
So wait,
Brown.
hold on, before we go on to the next one. You have a heartbreaking scene too, Brandon?
I do, but it's in a few episodes. That
I'm
we'll be
just a
talking
horrible
about.
human being. I don't care. What? We'll get on. Go ahead.
Oh, there's an episode that rips my heart out every time I see it.
I was just like, oh, they're dead.
There's actually two,
All
and they're
season.
both with Trip. You know, you have it with one Trip, and I've got my other two are with another Trip. You know, the real Trip, not that fake Trip, that copy.
All right. So next episode.
Next episode. A poor
Without the copy Trip.
Xerox Trip.
I'll just wait till you're done. Check my email here.
I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Brandi. Will you forgive me?
Be a while.